I woke up to a deep, metallic groan that didn't belong anywhere in the peaceful rhythm of my neighborhood. It was the kind of sound that made the walls hum faintly, like a distant beast clearing its throat. At first, half asleep and tangled in my sheets, I assumed it was construction somewhere on a main road. We had road work every other month. I was used to it. But then the noise came again, closer this time. Too close. I sat up, rubbing my eyes. Sunlight slipped through the blinds in narrow golden stripes. It should have been an ordinary morning, one of those slow, calm Mondays where the biggest decision I planned to make was whether to brew coffee or pick one up from the shop down the street. Instead, my phone buzzed violently on my nightstand. I reached for it with the lazy annoyance of someone who had not yet realized their life was about to take a very strange turn. My thumb unlocked the screen. The message was from my neighbor, Jenna. "Get outside. Now. She's coming for your driveway." My heartbeat tripped over itself. There was no need for her to specify who she was. Margaret, the HOA president, the tyrant with a clipboard. The woman who believed God had personally granted her dominion over every inch of poured concrete in the entire subdivision. For years, she'd terrorized the neighborhood with her strict rules and even stricter interpretations of those rules. A mailbox 2 inches too tall? Fine. Lawn slightly overgrown? Warning letter. Fence not approved by her personally? Violation notice. She lived for control. I sometimes wondered if she even slept with that clipboard under her pillow. But coming from my driveway, that was new. I threw on a sweatshirt, shoved my feet into my shoes, and hurried outside. The moment I stepped onto my porch, the sound hit me full force, loud, heavy, unmistakable. A bulldozer, bright yellow and sun-glinting, crawling slowly up our street like a mechanical beast stalking prey. Behind the tinted glass, the driver was focused straight ahead. And standing in front of it, chest puffed out with the pride of a dictator surveying her kingdom, was Margaret. Her iron-gray hair was tied into her usual tight bun, not a strand out of place. Her sunglasses covered half her face, and the other half wore her signature smirk, the kind of smirk that said she'd already decided the outcome of the day, and it didn't include my opinion. I walked toward her, pulse thudding, trying to keep my voice steady. "Margaret, what are you doing?" She barely turned her head. Good morning. You're just in time." "In time for what?" I asked, though the dread in my stomach already suspected the answer. She pointed to my driveway, my perfectly normal, boring, unremarkable driveway, with her pen like it was a crime scene. "For the demolition, of course." For a second, I genuinely believed I had misheard her. "The demolition of my driveway?" I repeated, slowly, hoping the absurdity would somehow make her question it. But Margaret didn't do doubt. "Yes," she said crisply. "Your driveway is in violation." "In violation of what?" I stared at her, waiting for the punchline that never came. She marched forward, her heels clicking loudly on the pavement, and squatted down at the edge of my driveway. She tapped the concrete with her pen, pointing at a tiny, barely visible hairline crack. If she hadn't shown me, I never would have seen it. "There," she said triumphantly, like she had uncovered a dead body. "A hazardous structural flaw." I actually laughed. I couldn't help it. "Hazardous? That crack is smaller than a strand of your hair." She ignored the jab. "The HOA has deemed it unsafe. Therefore, it must be removed immediately." My jaw dropped. "You can't be serious. It's a cosmetic flaw at best. And even if it wasn't, don't I at least get a notice? A hearing? Something." "Oh, you received notice," she said with the confidence of a woman who had never been questioned in her life. "I sent it last week." "No, you didn't. And I would have bet every dollar in my bank account on that." Margaret just smiled, slow, thin, and cold. "Well, that's unfortunate. But the demolition has already been scheduled. You can't stop it now." Something shifted then. Something small, but enough to raise the hairs along my arms. It wasn't just her tone. It was the way she wouldn't look me fully in the eye. The way she kept glancing down the road, like she was afraid someone else might show up. Like she wasn't just running a normal HOA operation, but rushing something. Hiding something. The bulldozer growled again, rolling another few feet forward. Neighbors began trickling out of their homes, drawn by the drama like moths to a very inappropriate flame. They whispered, stared, recorded. Margaret relished attention, but this time, she looked uneasy. "Margaret," I said carefully, lowering my voice. "What's really going on here?" She stiffened. "Too fast." "What do you mean?" "You're trying to demolish a perfectly fine driveway without a real violation. There's something you're not telling me." Her jaw tightened. For a moment, I thought she might actually crack. No pun intended. But she straightened, adjusted her sunglasses, and said, "Sir, this is HOA business. Please step aside." I didn't move. "Move," she said again, this time louder, her voice trembling slightly. The bulldozer stopped behind her, waiting for the signal. I stared at the machine, then at her, then at the tiny crack that had sparked this madness. This wasn't protocol. This wasn't normal. This wasn't even about the driveway. Something was very, very wrong. Then, suddenly, ding, my phone buzzed again. Another message. From Jenna. This one was just 3 words. Words that made everything inside me turn cold. She forged it. I looked up at Margaret. She wasn't smiling anymore. And that was the moment I realized this wasn't a violation issue. This was a cover-up, a desperate one, and whatever she was trying to hide was buried deeper than a crack in my driveway. The moment Jenna's message lit up my phone, something inside me snapped into focus. The fog of confusion, the disbelief, the half-awake irritation, it all burned away, leaving a single sharp thought. Margaret was hiding something. I slipped the phone into my pocket, keeping my expression neutral as I turned back toward her. The bulldozer hummed behind her, its engine low but threatening, like a predator waiting for the command to pounce. "Margaret," I began slowly, "I need to see the violation notice you claim you sent me." She lifted her chin, her lips thinning into a straight line as rigid as her personality. "I'm not required to provide documentation on site." "That's convenient," I said. She bristled. "Everything is filed properly. The board approved it." I took a step closer, lowering my voice so only she could hear. "Funny, because the board told me last month they weren't approving any demolition orders without committee review." That got her. Her left eyelid twitched, barely noticeable but enough. "You must be mistaken," she said, but her voice wavered. Before I could respond, a group of neighbors drifted closer, the kind who pretended they were just out for a walk, but their wide eyes and angled phones betrayed them. They hovered near the edge of the lawn, mumbling amongst themselves, torn between fear of HOA retaliation and excitement at the drama unfolding like a live TV special. One of them, Tom, the unofficial neighborhood watchdog, stepped forward. "Margaret," he called, "I checked the public notices this morning. There's no demolition permit file for this address." A ripple of murmurs passed through the crowd. Margaret froze. The muscles in her jaw clenched so tightly I half expected her teeth to crack worse than my driveway supposedly had. "You're all misinformed," she snapped. "I sent the permit request last night. It may not be uploaded yet." "Last night," Tom echoed, raising an eyebrow. "County offices don't process anything after 5 p.m. More murmurs. A few stifled laughs. Margaret's face flushed an alarming shade of red. This is not up for public debate. But it was too late. She'd lost the illusion of control, and she knew it. The bulldozer driver looked uneasy now, glancing back and forth between Margaret and the machine's controls, as if debating whether he should be part of this circus at all. I folded my arms. "Margaret, why don't you show me the notice? The one you said you sent." Her breath hitched. She took a step backward. A small one, but enough to confirm everything I already suspected. She didn't have anything to show. She was bluffing. Worse, lying. "Listen," she said, turning the charm back on. But it was brittle now, cracking around the edges. "I'm simply enforcing HOA regulations. I shouldn't have to defend myself. Then it shouldn't be hard to show me the paperwork." Her eyes darted behind me, toward my front door. It was a brief glance, barely a flicker, but I caught it. And in that 1 second, something clicked. She hadn't just come to bulldoze my driveway. She'd been on my property earlier. The realization made my skin crawl. I walked toward my house without another word. I heard Margaret call after me, but I didn't stop. I pushed open the door and immediately saw it. An envelope taped crookedly to the inside. That wasn't how official notices were delivered. HOA letters were always mailed or slipped neatly into the mailbox. Never taped, never hidden. My pulse spiked as I peeled it off and opened it. Inside was a single paper, a notice of violation, stating, "Immediate driveway removal required within 24 hours." Signed by Margaret herself. Except not really. The signature looked wrong. Too uneven, too sloppy. Like someone had traced it or forged it. I stepped back outside, holding the paper in my hand like evidence in a crime investigation. "Margaret," I called. She stiffened as I walked toward her, the paper fluttering in the wind. "You want to explain this?" I held it up. Her sunglasses couldn't hide the panic now. Her lip trembled before she forced it back into her usual mask. "That is your violation notice," she said, but her voice was barely steady. "No, this is a fake." I stepped closer. "Did you think I wouldn't recognize your real signature? After 4 years of living under your rule." Around us, whispering intensified. Jenna muttered, "I told you." Tom whistled under his breath. One of the moms gasped dramatically, probably already crafting a gossip post for the neighborhood group chat. Margaret swallowed hard. "I didn't forge anything." "You also didn't send this last week," I said. "It was taped to my door sometime this morning." "I don't know what you're talking about," she said, her voice high-pitched now. I narrowed my eyes. "You were on my porch earlier, weren't you?" She flinched. A single tiny movement, enough to confirm everything. But then something strange happened. Her expression changed. Not into fear, not into anger, but something far more unsettling. Something torn, conflicted, as if she wanted to say something but couldn't. As if admitting the truth would cost her more than humiliation. "Margaret," Tom said gently, stepping forward, "why are you doing this?" Her breathing turned shallow. She looked at the bulldozer, then at the street, then back at the forged document in my hand. Her fingers twitched restlessly at her sides. "I'm following protocol," she whispered. "No," I shook my head. "You're following someone else's orders." Her face drained of color. And for a moment, just a moment, her eyes flicked toward the end of the street where a navy blue pickup truck sat parked. A truck I recognized. It belonged to her husband, a man I'd barely seen in months. Before I could process it, the bulldozer engine revved suddenly, startling everyone. The driver leaned out of the window, shouting nervously, "Ma'am, are we doing this or not?" Margaret turned sharply, snapping at him. "Hold your position. Do not move until I say so." The driver recoiled and shut his mouth. I folded the fake notice carefully, holding it like a ticking bomb. "Margaret," I said quietly, "you're not doing this for the HOA." Her eyes glistened for just a second before she turned away. She didn't answer. She didn't deny it. And that silence was louder than any confession she could have spoken. Something was unraveling. Someone was pressuring her. And my driveway? It was only the beginning. The forged notice felt heavier in my hand than a single sheet of paper had any right to. It wasn't just a fake document. It was proof. Proof that someone had planned this. Someone close enough to Margaret to imitate her handwriting. Close enough to slip onto my porch unnoticed. Bold enough to request the demolition of private property without a shred of legality. But why my driveway? Why today? Why so desperate? I stared at Margaret, but she refused to look back at me, her gaze fixed firmly on the bulldozer as if the machine could save her from her own unraveling lies. "Margaret," I said again, "I'm giving you one chance to explain this." She didn't move. Jenna stepped closer, arms crossed tightly. "Just tell him the truth." Margaret's jaw clenched. Her voice came out a tremor of breath. "You wouldn't understand." I raised the paper in my hand. "Try me." She still didn't respond. Instead, she took a small step backward, then another, retreating as if the forged letter were a weapon. The bulldozer driver, clearly regretting taking this job, raised his hands. "Look, I don't want any trouble. I was told this was approved. If it's not, I'm shutting this thing down." "No," Margaret snapped suddenly, her voice cracking with panic. "No, you must stay. You must finish this." "Finish what? Destroying concrete that wasn't broken? Covering up a mistake? Or hiding something beneath it?" That last thought made the back of my neck prickle. I lowered the paper, my voice soft but sharp. "Margaret, what's under my driveway?" Her eyes widened, not with confusion, but with fear. Real fear. Not of me. Of what might be discovered. She quickly looked away, pretending to check her clipboard, but it was obvious her thoughts were racing. Jenna whispered, "She knows something." Tom stepped forward. "Margaret, if you're trying to destroy evidence." "I am not destroying anything," she snapped, so loudly the whole crowd flinched. But her shout wasn't defensive. It was terrified. I'd never in my life heard fear coming from Margaret. It was like hearing a wolf whimper. It didn't match the image of the powerful HOA queen she'd built over the years. I took a slow breath and turned away from her, pulling out my phone. If she wouldn't give answers, someone else would. I dialed the county office, the same clerk I spoke with earlier. Luckily, he picked up right away. "Hi, this is—" "Oh, I remember," he said, sounding amused. "The driveway guy." "That's me," I said. "Look, I just received a violation notice that claims my driveway must be demolished immediately. I need to confirm its legitimacy." "Read the violation code to me," he said. I scanned the page. HOA 7B, Emergency Surface Removal. He snorted. "There's no such code." "What? That's not a valid designation. HOA emergency codes start with E, not HOA. And there's no emergency surface removal category. Ever." I stared at the paper. A completely made-up code? It didn't even try to hide it with a real regulation. "Okay," I murmured, "that's what I thought." "Also," he added, "if there was a structural issue on your property, only a licensed inspector could issue a removal order. Has anyone from the county visited your home in the last week?" "No." "Then this notice is absolutely fake. You should file a report." I thanked him and hung up. Turning back to the crowd, I lifted the letter. "It's not just forged. The violation code isn't even real." A wave of shocked gasps rippled through the neighbors. Tom nodded grimly. "We figured." Margaret finally spoke, barely above a whisper. "You shouldn't have called them." I stared at her. "Why? Because it exposes what you're doing?" "No," she said, voice shaking. "Because you don't know what you just started." The air shifted. Colder. Heavier. Even the bulldozer driver stopped fidgeting, sensing the tension. "What does that mean?" I asked. Margaret opened her mouth, as if she wanted to spill everything, but just as quickly, she closed it. She pressed her lips together hard, her eyes darting once more toward the navy blue pickup truck at the end of the street. Her husband's truck, a truck that had been sitting there silently for the last half hour. I followed her gaze. The truck's windows were tinted so darkly I couldn't see who was inside, if anyone was inside at all. But the attention Margaret kept giving it told me enough. She wasn't acting alone, and she wasn't the one in control. "Margaret," I said quietly, "did he do this?" A tremor passed through her shoulders. Before she could answer, her radio, clipped to her hip, crackled suddenly. A low male voice came through. Rough. Impatient. "Is it done yet?" Margaret's face turned ghostly white. The neighbors froze. I froze. She grabbed the radio. So quickly she dropped her clipboard. Papers scattered across the driveway like frightened birds. "Not yet," she whispered urgently into the radio, stepping away from the crowd. "They're asking questions." The voice hissed back, then stopped them. "I can't handle it, Margaret," the voice growled. "Or I will." Her hand shook so violently the radio nearly fell. I exchanged a look with Tom. Jenna stepped up beside me, eyes wide. "Who was that?" I demanded. Margaret didn't answer. Instead, she lunged for her fallen clipboard, scrambling to collect the pages. But one sheet fluttered away and landed face up near my shoe. It wasn't a form, or a complaint, or an inspection report. It was a printed email. Its subject line read, Driveway removal, invoice ready for pickup, dated yesterday, from a local cement company. Addressed to Margaret's husband. My breath caught. The price listed was thousands of dollars. And the job description? Driveway removal and replacement. Homeowner unaware. Bill HOA. I felt every part of my body go still. Jenna whispered, "Oh my God." Tom exhaled sharply. This wasn't an HOA order. It was a scam. A deliberate, planned scam. To profit off my driveway. And Margaret had gotten caught in the middle, either as a participant or as someone being manipulated. Slowly, I looked up at her. She stood frozen, staring at the scattered papers, the radio still clutched tightly in her shaking hand. "Margaret," I said softly, "your husband did this, didn't he?" Tears brimmed in her eyes. Real tears, not the dramatic kind she used at board meetings. She opened her mouth to speak, but before she could, the truck at the end of the street suddenly roared to life. Every head turned. The real danger was just beginning to show itself. The rumble of the navy blue pickup truck sliced through the uneasy silence like a warning. Heads swiveled. Conversations died instantly. Even the bulldozer driver, who had been anxiously tapping the steering wheel, went still. The truck hadn't moved for nearly an hour. Now suddenly it was alive. The engine revved once, loud, deliberate, before the vehicle slowly rolled forward, inching down the street toward us. The neighbors instinctively stepped back, forming a loose semicircle around me. Margaret and the evidence scattered across my driveway. Margaret clutched her radio tightly, her knuckles turning white. She didn't look at the truck, but the tremor running through her shoulders told me everything. She knew exactly who was behind the wheel. Jenna leaned in beside me. "Is that?" "Yes," I whispered. "Her husband," Tom muttered. This just got a lot uglier. As the truck approached, the bulldozer driver finally climbed down from his machine, clearly wanting no part of whatever this was turning into. He backed away slowly until he reached the safety of the sidewalk. The truck rolled to a stop just a few feet from Margaret. The window remained up, tinted dark like a secret. No one could see the driver's face, but the heavy breathing audible from the cracked window made the hair on my arm stand on end. The tension was suffocating. Finally, the window whirred down halfway. A man's voice, low, sharp, and vibrating with anger, cut through the air. "Margaret." She flinched hard, like she'd been struck. The man continued, "What did I tell you?" Her voice trembled. I'm handling it." "No, you're not." His tone hardened. "I told you it was supposed to be done by 10. A collective gasp rippled through the neighbors. 10. As in 10 o'clock. As in today's deadline. As in this was pre-planned, timed, and orchestrated with precision. I stepped forward, anger simmering. "Why are you trying to demolish my driveway without permission? Without permits? Without anything legitimate?" Margaret's husband didn't even look at me. His glare stayed fixed on her. "You told him," he snapped. "No," she cried quickly. He found the letter. And Tom saw the permit wasn't filed yet. Yet, he cut in sharply. Yet, there isn't going to be a permit. We don't need one if the HOA orders it. "But they didn't," she shot back desperately. "The board doesn't know. They'll catch me, us." Her slip was quiet but unmistakable. "Us," Jenna whispered. "Oh, wow. So she's involved." But I wasn't convinced. Margaret looked terrified, far more terrified than any HOA president caught forging a document should have been. This wasn't the fear of consequences. This was the fear of a man who held power over her. Her husband leaned out the window, just enough for us to see the outline of his face. The hard jaw, the clenched teeth, the fury. "You told me this would be easy," he growled. "One driveway, one morning. The HOA pays the bill, and we're set. But you couldn't even manage that." "I didn't agree to tricking the board," she whispered. "I didn't agree to—" "You agreed to help your husband," he spat. Margaret's eyes glossed with tears. "I didn't think it would go this far." Tom stepped forward. "Sir, we all heard you. What you're admitting is fraud. You can't bill the HOA for work that wasn't authorized." He laughed. Actually laughed. "You think anyone here will testify? Half of you are scared of my wife. The other half owe her favors." The neighbors stiffened, but said nothing. He wasn't wrong. Margaret had ruled the HOA with intimidation for years. People feared her. They obeyed her. They resented her. But now they saw something new. She wasn't ruling. She was being ruled. She wasn't the villain. She was trapped in something worse. I walked toward the truck, stopping a safe distance away. "Why my driveway?" For the first time, the man looked directly at me. His eyes were cold, emptier than I expected. "Why?" He smirked. "Because your driveway is the most expensive one to replace. And we needed a big invoice." "That's it?" I asked. "Just money." He shrugged. "What else?" Margaret whispered. "You said you needed it for the business, that the company was failing." He slammed his hand on the steering wheel. She jumped. "I need you to do what I said," he barked. And I said demolish the damn driveway. The bulldozer driver took another step back. Yeah, I'm out, he muttered. He turned and walked briskly toward his machine, shutting it down. Margaret's husband glared. I paid you to be here. Not enough, the driver replied over his shoulder. The tension snapped, thin, brittle, and dangerous. Jenna tugged my sleeve. Call the police, she whispered urgently. Right now. I pulled out my phone. Margaret's husband saw. Put that down, he said, his voice turning low and lethal. I didn't. I dialed 911. Put it down. His voice rose to a snarl. Margaret stepped between us, tears streaking down her face. Please, stop. Don't call. Hill, he shouted. Margaret. She froze mid-sentence. The operator answered. 911. What's your emergency? I kept my eyes on him as I spoke. I need officers at Willow Lane. Fraud attempt, forged HOA documents, and a contractor threatening residents. His eyes darkened. You shouldn't have done that, he said quietly. The truck jolted forward, lunging inches closer. The crowd screamed and scattered. I stumbled back, but Margaret ran toward the truck, slamming both palms on the hood. Stop, she cried. Stop, stop, stop. Her husband slammed the brakes. The truck jerked violently. Margaret nearly fell, but caught herself. She pressed her forehead against the hood, sobbing. Please don't make this worse. He stared at her. Something inside him shifted. Not compassion, not remorse, just calculation. Then he slammed the truck into reverse and sped back down the street, tires screeching. Neighbors rushed forward as Margaret collapsed onto the grass, shaking. Jenna knelt beside her. Why would he do that? Why would you let him? Margaret didn't answer right away. She just stared at the ground, empty, broken. Then she whispered, You don't understand. If I didn't help him, he said he'd bury everything. Bury what? I asked. Margaret looked up at me, eyes hollow. The truth. She inhaled shakily. And what's under your driveway? Margaret's words hit the neighborhood like a lightning strike. What's under your driveway? For a moment, no one moved. No one breathed. Even the leaves seemed to stop rustling, as if the entire world had paused to hear her next sentence. But Margaret didn't speak again. She just rocked slightly on the grass, her hands shaking, her breathing uneven. Tom crouched beside her. Margaret, what did he put under there? She flinched, then swallowed, staring blankly into nothing. I didn't know at first, she whispered. But when he said he needed the demolition done today, I realized. I crouched down as well, feeling the cold creep up my spine. Realized what? She squeezed her eyes shut. That it wasn't about money anymore. The crowd tightened around us. Neighbors stayed silent, leaning closer, afraid to miss a single word. Jenna pressed gently. What's under the driveway, Margaret? Margaret trembled violently. Something he should have gotten rid of. Something he hid when his business went bad. He said the HOA would never allow inspections, so no one would ever find it. Her voice cracked, and he was right. Until now. My heartbeat thundered. What did he hide? I don't know exactly, she said. He never told me. But she hesitated. A long, painful pause stretched out. But I urged. But he said if anyone ever dug it up, our lives would be ruined. A chill crawled down my arms. Suddenly, the distant wail of sirens echoed in the neighborhood. Police were coming. The sound grew louder, bouncing off the quiet houses, cutting through the tension. Margaret's eyes widened. No, he can't see the police here. He'll come back. He'll do something terrible. I placed a hand on her shoulder. They're coming because of what he did, not you. She shook her head frantically. You don't know him like I do. Tom muttered under his breath. We're starting to. The sirens grew closer, and within moments 2 patrol cars turned the corner, lights flashing. As officers stepped out, the neighbors exhaled like they'd all been holding their breath for the last hour. I stood tall, ready to explain everything, but before I could, Margaret grabbed my wrist. No, she whispered fiercely. Let me talk. Shock flickered through me. You going to tell them the truth? Her eyes glistened. I'm done hiding for him. An officer approached us. We received a call about a fraudulent demolition attempt and a violent individual involved. Who called? I did, I said. It's all real. The HOA president was being coerced into approving an illegal demolition order. The suspect, her husband, fled the scene. The officer's eyes narrowed. And the forged documents? Margaret took a trembling breath and handed over a clipboard. They're right here. And the invoice. Check the dates. The officer skimmed the papers, eyebrows rising. These signatures don't match. And this invoice, this is serious fraud. Jenna pointed toward the end of the street. He drove off that way. The second officer radioed the description, while the first continued his questions. What exactly was the motive here? He asked. Margaret swallowed hard. He told me we'd make money, that the HOA would pay thousands. But when I hesitated this morning, he said he wasn't doing this just for profit. Then for what? She hesitated again. Her voice was barely audible. To destroy evidence. The officer straightened. What kind of evidence? Margaret looked at me, her eyes filled with guilt and fear. Something he buried under your driveway. She turned back to the officer. I don't know what it is, but he said if anyone found it, he'd go to prison. A heavy silence fell. The officer's expression hardened. Ma'am, are you saying there's potentially criminal evidence hidden on this property? Yes, Margaret whispered. And your husband intends to destroy it? Yes. The officer radioed urgently, requesting forensic and property crime units to Willow Lane. Possible buried evidence at residential site. My stomach twisted. Buried evidence? Under my driveway? The crowd erupted into hushed whispers. Tom muttered, this just became a crime scene. The bulldozer driver, who had been lingering at a safe distance, approached cautiously. Look, officers, I didn't know anything about this. The guy paid me cash to bring the machine. Said it was an HOA issue. We'll need to take your statement, one officer said. As they moved away, Margaret slumped back onto the grass, drained. I knelt beside her. Why didn't you tell someone earlier? She wiped her face with trembling hands. Because I thought I could protect him, or at least control him. But I didn't see how desperate he'd become. Jenna asked softly, what made him do this today? Margaret looked up, haunted. Someone told him there would be surprise county audits in this neighborhood this week. Driveway inspections. He panicked. He said your driveway had to be destroyed before the county arrived, before they scanned it. My breath caught. Scanned it. Ground-penetrating radar, Margaret whispered. For structural checks. He said if they scanned your driveway, they'd find what he buried under it 2 years ago. Tom's eyes widened. 2 years ago, wasn't that when his company got audited? Margaret nodded slowly. Yes. Realization hit everyone at once. He buried something after an audit. Something illegal. Something he couldn't risk being discovered. And the county coming back now, it meant he had run out of time. The sirens faded as more police arrived, now surrounding the area. Yellow tape went up around my driveway. Officers examined the crack Margaret had pointed out earlier. That crack, I said suddenly. Why did he focus on that tiny crack? Margaret looked down, ashamed. Because he made it. What? He came during the night, a few days ago. He hit it with something heavy, just enough to break the surface. So he could claim it was hazardous. So he could justify the demolition. I exhaled sharply, feeling anger rise. He set this all up. Yes, Margaret whispered. Every part of it. One officer approached us. We have units searching for the suspect's vehicle. You're all safe here. But Margaret shook her head slowly. You don't understand, she murmured. He's coming back. Why would he? I asked. She looked at my driveway. The crack, now taped off by police, the center of the chaos. Because he has to, she whispered. He can't let the police find what's under there. She shivered violently. And if the police don't find it first, he'll come for it himself. If you hate HOAs, then hit that subscribe button